Hello, everyone, and welcome to our latest Kahoot webinar. It is just at the hour, 1 p.m. Eastern for me. I'm sure we have many time zones, many times of the day joining in today. So very, very glad you are here, no matter where that might be from. Already see some hellos in the chat. So hello, Amy and Sylvia and Lourdes and Natalia and all who are joining. We are so very glad you are here. And today we are spending some time together to chat specifically about how Kahoot can be used in the higher education, university, and collegiate learning experiences. We are so glad you're here to partake in this conversation, this brainstorm, this inspiration session, and really hope to connect together, collaborate together, and ultimately help to make learning even more awesome and effective, no matter the age level, no matter the grade level, ability level, and preparing our teachers to do exactly that in their own classrooms as well. In fact, a little known kind of tidbit and piece of Kahoot history is that Kahoot was actually first introduced at that collegiate higher education university level at the Norwegian University of Science and Technology. So we're really back to our roots in this webinar today. We're connecting or sharing in the 15 years since and seeing how Kahoot has evolved to be appropriate not just for that higher ed level, but how we can equip teachers in studying and preparation and performance and review all the way to any level, elementary, primary, through vocational training, collegiate level, university level, all across the board. And connection and experiences within that Kahoot learning place and learning environment hopefully will feel pretty familiar too. During our webinar today, we're going to discover how students who learn with Kahoot don't just perform better academically, but they're developing their skills and confidence that helps transform and really level up their own future classrooms as teachers themselves. Whether Kahoot was introduced to you as a learner or even now as a campus leader, an interactive gaming learning experience, at least in our opinion, it really helps to make an impact in whatever content area, subject matter, or instructional focus. In fact, I say in our opinion, but really we know that Kahoot is used by over 95% of global universities and institutions. So I could say take it from me as a Kahoot expert, but more importantly, take it from one another, colleagues, teammates, peers in this space. We're excited to partake with you in this awesome learning and awesome experience. So to kick things off today, we are going to launch a live Kahoot because you could have probably guessed that if we're talking about Kahoot, we're going to use Kahoot to learn and engage today as well. So in case you haven't joined a Kahoot recently, just a quick reminder, a refresher on how to play along and learn along with us. Excuse me, if you are joining from a desktop computer or a laptop, now is a good time to open a new tab in your browser and visit www.kahoot.it. You'll then see a prompt to enter a game pin. I'm seeing the game pin very big here, 682772. Alternatively, you can also use a mobile device, a cell phone, a tablet, whatever works for you. Scan that QR code or even use your Kahoot app. You'll use and find that same unique game pin to join us in this unique lesson. You can add your own name as you join the Kahoot. I'm seeing some first names already come through. Our participants, we're at 14, 16 people already. Elena has her St. Patrick's Day shamrock. Thank you for that celebratory nod to the holiday and day today. Feel free to add in anything specific to you, a name, maybe a university, state, or country you're joining in from. If we haven't met before, my name is Hannah. I'm based in New York. I could add that as my nickname. While you're joining in, I also want to just review the agenda. We're first going to get an introduction today on all things impact with higher education and how teachers and even teacher prep candidates and pre-service teachers are using Kahoot. We'll hear from Mara and exactly that. She'll talk through the research and the pedagogy and the data behind how this impactful learning happens. Then I'll be back on stage. I'll take over the mic again to welcome a few real life educators and Kahoot experts for a live panel discussion. Really excited to be joined by Julie and Ian to do exactly that today. And then finally, definitely make sure that you stick around to the end because I'm excited to share a very limited and exclusive offer code for you. And those last few minutes as a special reward and thank you, and also as an opportunity to use the features that we'll talk about today. So stick around for this whole 45-minute webinar. We're excited to have you here and have lots and lots of learning to cover. A few final quick housekeeping reminders I just want to mention before we really get kickstarted and jumped in. You probably already noticed we're recording this webinar. So if you need to step away at any time, teach your own course, talk to students in office hours, what have you, know that you can always rewind this session, watch it back on your own pace at your own time asynchronously, or even rewind to catch up on things that felt super intriguing and interesting. So should you need to step away at any time, you can always rejoin or just catch us on the on-demand recording as well. Already see the chat is super lively and active. I see Martha joining, Jose is joining, Betty is joining. Feel free to keep using that chat to share inspiration, comments, ideas, what have you. We also invite you to use the Q&A tool. This is a great way to ask specific questions related to Kahoot tools, what you see our presenters discussing today, anything that's a little bit more technical. The Q&A is a great place to add these questions just to be sure nothing is lost in the conversation or in the presentation along the way. This helps us track the comments, track the messages to be sure we're answering everything and anything that you might be wondering. If, however, a question is lost and we don't get to your question live, or even you have some lingering thoughts after the fact, always feel free to get in touch with us on the support team. We're happy to answer questions, troubleshoot with you technology and subscription wise, and just make sure you're getting the most out of your Kahoot experience. But that's all for me, at least for now. So let's get started. If you haven't joined the Kahoot already, now is a great reminder and time to do exactly that with the game pin 682772. And Mara will join us on stage to share all of those pedagogical tips and background for the why and the how Kahoot helps to engage students. Welcome, Mara.
Thank you so much, Hannah. Hi, everyone. My name is Meira. I'm a learning designer here at Kahoot, which basically means I spend my days obsessing over learning and research. And I know I'm not alone because you're all here, excited to learn about engagement and student outcomes. I myself used to be a teacher training back in Finland, where I'm from. So I was super happy to join this webinar today. As Hannah said, we're going to play a Kahoot. It's in a lecture mode. This is a specific mode designed for higher ed. So please, you have still time to join in so you get to experience how it looks for student perspective. You'll notice it has less gamified elements than your classic Kahoot experience. We have the QA feature that, let me see, somebody already wrote a question. Thank you. And you can also react on the slides as well. So if you're really engaged, you have a question or a thought, you can press on your device and react. And me as an instructor or presenter will get information back to me, like which part of my presentation was engaging for my audience, which is you today. You will notice that I have a lot of slides and it looks like a presentation. It's not that many slides, to be honest, so don't be scared. But you might think that this doesn't look like a normal Kahoot. It looks like Google Slides or PowerPoint slides. That's true. It's my slide deck that I sync to Kahoot. So I can run my presentation, but also add Kahoot questions in between. So both lecture mode that we're going to play and the slide sync are new features to Kahoot that can help you make the presentations you already have just a bit more conversational with your students. Okay, so let's get started on the game. And I'm going to start with a question, get everyone in and joining. Where are you joining from? It's a pin question type, a feature in the EDU subscriptions for higher ed. You can put a picture and then audience can pin it. There is no correct answers here. I could add points as well, but it's all up your decision. Let's see where everyone is coming. We have 10 seconds more. I hope to see a lot of variation. I wonder if anyone from Finland is here, fellow colleagues. Oh, I'm just going to put the music on. That was a bit quiet, huh? Oh, wow. So we have somebody far in the corner in the ocean on a boat. We have Canadians, United States, South America presenting, Africa, Europe. Super nice. Thank you all for coming. This is super exciting to have you all. We have a global community of teachers, and I love these questions because we can all see that we are here together thinking about education, thinking about what kind of learning is best for our students. The next one is a word cloud. It's another new question type you might not have seen. What's your role at your institution? This is a quick one. Just type your role. Don't overthink it. And you will see what happens in the word cloud after everyone has answered. It's a very visual question type that gives us spread of a cloud of words, where when people say the same word many times, the word becomes bigger. Just highlighting a few fun question types before getting on. And let's see. Okay, facilitators, technical assistant, nurse educators, teachers, professors, instructor. Professors seems to be the biggest crowd here. Welcome. Everyone equally, love to have you here. Hope to give you some ideas, keep the chat going, ask questions. I hope to answer everything, and well, not everything, but at least some before the panel starts. So a quick lay of the land, what Kahoot is. If you're new at Kahoot, here are the core Kahoot features. You can create your own content, including syncing your slides, as I have done here. This is just a Google slide. I brought it back to Kahoot and add my questions, or you can discover content that already exists on the platform. You can host live in the room or over video like we're doing now. You can assign work for students to do at their own pace, and you can gather insights, the real data on how your students are actually doing. So depending how you use it, Kahoot can be your go-to formative assessment tool, or it can be a conversation starter that makes your lectures feel less like a monologue and more of a two-way conversation with the students. So it's the same platform, same format that lends itself to different type of experiences, and you are the designer of the experiences, whether you want it to be self-paced homework or you want it to be something to done before students come to the lecture, so you get everyone on the same page, or whether you want your slide deck to be a bit more interactive, some polls, some questions, or maybe you want some open-ended conversation starters to get students thinking and discussing and participating. And if you're first time joining to learn about Kahoot, no worries. We have about 9 million educators using the platform. So welcome. You are definitely not alone. We've been around well over a decade, I think 12 or 13 years. And our community just keeps growing, which is a great testament and feedback that we are doing something right, that teachers appreciate us and come back to us lesson after lesson, semester after semester, year after year. Oh, thank you for the reactions. And you can see, I'm just going to show it. Here I can see what types of reactions you're getting. So after my session, I could come back and see which slides got reactions from my students or participants or audience. And it gives me also information and also something for you to think and do while you're listening. Like Hannah mentioned, Kahoot was born in higher ed. The professor simply needed a better way to engage students in large lectures. And now we have about 95% of the global top 500 universities using Kahoot. Perhaps some of you recognize your university here. I knew I found mine. That's in the corner on the right. That's University of Helsinki with this logo of Flame of Knowledge, I guess. Not quite sure. But yeah, I'm going to go to a quick question. So get your device ready to see if we are still awake. So here we go. It's going to be a quiz, a multiple choice. Kahoot was originally built for which learning environment? Hannah mentioned it. I mentioned it. It's just a quick check to get you activated, get you alert, see if you paid attention on my next slide. And it's a formative assessment to me as well. Maybe I should be clearer. Maybe I should stop and pause. Maybe I take what the students know and reteach something. Exactly, it was university and higher ed. A fun fact, this is Alf Inge, the professor who started Kahoot, still going strong in Technological University in Oslo, teaching with Kahoot. So he had a problem of mass lectures, everyone on their own device, everyone looking at the screen. It's not really the environment for interaction. So he wanted to solve it, and here we are. here we are 12 years later. You might have noticed that normally in Classic Kahoot, there's a leaderboard. I could open the leaderboard if I wanted to, but I don't have to. So here you can see the points of everyone and kind of a leaderboard. But this is a lecture mode, so I can deplay the gamified elements for this audience. So here we have the 5 common use cases in higher ed, all inside one platform. 1, we get students active and engaged, not just listening passively. I'm constantly asking you questions, so you cannot go and check your emails. You cannot zone out. You cannot go and do anything. I want you to be here and listen and learn with me. You're actively participating and learning. 2nd, Kahoot can be your presentation tool with added interactivity. When I was teaching, my lecture slot was 4 hours long, so I needed something for the students to also engage, share the load of their learning, the teaching, participate in conversations, and be active. Otherwise, none of us would have made it out. A 4-hour monologue is something no one can do, I think. Formative assessment is one of the most popular use cases. It's data for the educator and for the students themselves too. After every question, I can pause, I can reteach, I can see if everyone got it or if they didn't get it, if there are misconceptions. And of course, at the end of the session, I can go to the reports and see what the students did. We have a lot of self-study tools for independent study. And for the cognitive load, I'm going to circle back to it on the last few slides because I had a bit more to say on that topic. So we are famous for engagement. I think when we say Kahoot, a lot of kids know it. They know it from primary or middle school or high school, maybe university, and they're like, oh, I loved it. I love Kahoot. It's super fun. But I want to take a bit of pause. What do we mean when we say engaging? Because often people think engagement means fun. So we just need to do something super fun and kids love it. But at Kahoot, we think engagement is a bit something else, a bit more like this. First, it's emotional engagement. We need the foundation for learning, the positive emotional state where a student feels safe, he's motivated, he's confident. The low stakes, game-based environment that allows him to try without fear of failure. The second pillar is behavioral engagement. That's the action. That's the thing we see. The students actively answering questions, debating and reasoning, the different question types, the kind of movement of the game. They're locked in anticipating an answer, anticipating a result. And thirdly, there is the cognitive engagement, which is the goal. It's hard to visibly see. It's the mental heavy lifting, the thinking that happens in the brains of the students where the learning happens. We can measure some of the emotional aspects. We can see the behavioral aspects. The cognitive aspect is a bit harder to measure. So we trust the research and we trust the science. And that's what I'm here presenting for you. Since we have been in the market for a long time, we have over 300 independent peer-reviewed publications across 70 countries, showing that students don't just enjoy Kahoot, they also learn more, and that's important. The results fall into 2 buckets: the performance, the learning outcomes, attendance, participation, they all go up. And environment part, which is engagement, motivation, classroom dynamics, they all also improve when you look at all these studies independently. The one part I want to highlight is that Kahoot lowers stress and anxiety when it comes to testing and assessment. And that's a hard thing when you have a testing and assessment situation. Some students will get nervous, and then you're really not testing what they know because their energy is going to anxiety or stress. But when the format is game-like and familiar to students, they are more willing to get things wrong. They're more willing to take risks and take it as a learning opportunity. So getting things wrong in a game, getting things wrong in a Kahoot, no biggie. It's a learning thing. It's a learning moment. Then you get feedback. It's one of the most powerful learning mechanisms that we have. Okay, because I want to keep you activated. I'm going to ask a question. So get ready. It's a true or false. It's a quick one. Uh, Research shows Kahoot reduces student stress and anxiety, not just improves test scores. True or false? Quick one. That's 10 seconds. 10 seconds to go to get you activated again. Everyone was paying attention. Thank you. It is true. So it reduces student stress and anxiety when it comes to assessment because it doesn't feel like assessment. It doesn't feel like your pen and paper quiz your teacher surprises you with. Here is some numbers from a meta-analysis. A meta-analysis is just a study that studies many tiny studies and pulls them together for an average result. So this meta-analysis covers studies with over 2,000 participants using Kahoot and a group of students not using Kahoot so they can compare what happens. And the results were that groups using Kahoot moved students on average from the 50th percentile to the 72nd percentile. And what that means in normal terms, like human being terms, it's a full letter grade improvement. So that's a difference from being a B student and an A student. So when people ask me, oh, Kahoot is just fun, but does it actually work? I say you can check it out for yourself. We have a lot of research for you to check on your own. These are independent research, and they're on kahoot.com/research. Maybe somebody from the team can put it on the chat. So kahoot.com/research. So you can check it out for yourself. And independently, Kahoot ranked #1 in the global EdTech evidence list. There was over 1,000 certified products, 75 countries, 150 researchers, and they scored us across 5 dimensions: that efficacy, effectiveness, ethics, and equity. And environment. We got gold in efficacy, ethics, and equity. And the ethics and equity really matters a lot to me, a lot to us as a company, because it's not just about outcomes, but it's also about who benefits and how the tool behaves. So we want to be a tool for everyone, all learners. So we take that seriously, that we are for all learners, not just for a select few. Okay, and I said I'd circle back to the cognitive load, which is mostly about not overwhelming your brain. And Kahoot reduces that overwhelm on both the professor and the student side. For you as the instructor, is less juggling of tools. You get real-time data instead of guessing. You get the data on a live game immediately, and you get the reports after. You have one platform doing multiple jobs. And for your students, instead of absorbing an hour of content passively, and I know myself, they're going to fall asleep, they're going to start doing something else. They're processing it in smaller active chunks. They are communicating actively, interacting with the content. It makes the knowledge acquisition more effective. It's not just engaging, it's how our brains handle learning material. We have to be actively learning, actively discussing, not just receiving from the instructor, because that doesn't work that well. Okay, so this all lives in Kahoot EDU, which is purpose-built for higher ed. We have 4 pillars: instructor efficiency. So you are saving time and not drowning in marking, for example. We have instructional effectiveness. So your sessions are actually moving learning outcomes. Student engagement, the experience that gets students laughing and smiling and connecting, and also actively participating with the material. And campus-wide enablement, because it's not for one classroom, we have tools for the whole campus, so it scales across a whole institution. All right, this was a lot of information. I'm sorry, I had to be quite quick, so I wanted to leave enough space for our wonderful panel. So I'm going to do one last question before we close up this Kahoot, and it's a poll. So it's opinion-based question. Where are you on your Kahoot journey right now? Maybe you are brand new to Kahoot. You're welcome. Occasional user sometimes. Sometimes you do a Kahoot, sometimes you return. Maybe a regular user, it's part of how you teach, or you are already our champion and advocate for Kahoot usage. Okay, we had some new user. I hope we gave a high level presentation. I hope you get a lot out of the panel as well. Occasional users, I hope we get you to be regular users. As regular users welcome a lot, and also champions. I love that. So we have a mixed bunch, a lot of applause and reactions. Um, I really enjoyed telling you about Kahoot. I enjoyed this session. I'm really excited to hear about our panelists because I know it's a very interesting bunch, and I know Julie, for instance, personally, and excited to always hear her thoughts.
Amazing. Thank you, Mara. And glad to see that there's the occasional or even the rare Kahoot user here because hopefully the data is speaking for itself. And if the data is not convincing you, I mean, Kahoot was ranked #1 in a global list of ed tech tools, over 1,000 different tools across 75 different countries. So that's pretty impressive data, I'd say. But in case that's not persuading you or convincing you, inspiring you to start, I really think that these anecdotes and experiences from both Julie and Ian will help you feel that much more inspired and excited about using Kahoot in your own experience. And our panel is really meant to help you connect the why on Kahoot. So Mara told us a little bit how that process works, what tools are available, and what that might look like in your classroom. And Julie and Ian will share a little bit more anecdotal data, some qualitative experiences that help us to understand why Kahoot is making such an impact. Keeping on the trend with the student turned teacher experience and those two hats and lenses, excited to have both of those points of view with us today. Dr. Julie Meyer is here. She's a longtime Kahoot user, has been a Kahoot ambassador as well. So a really big advocate for gamified and interactive learning, and also a professor of education at McKendree University. She specializes in education technology and how tech tools can be adapted for classroom practice and instruction. Julie supports really every level of learner, undergraduate, graduate, PhD candidate, all of those that are interested in where ed tech is going in classroom instruction, student interaction, and student learning. To flip the switch on the other side, the K-12 perspective and even the student mindset, we have Ian here. Ian Fairley is joining us from the other side of the desk, if you will. He's just recently earned his master's in education technology and brings really fresh firsthand pedagogy and perspective as both an elementary school STEM coordinator and a tech specialist, as well as having the experience of using Kahoot through the COVID changes, virtual learning shifts, and everything that happened in between. So excited to have Julie and Ian both here. I'm going to hand over the mics to welcome them now and be sure that they have an opportunity to share, introduce themselves, and add a little bit more color to our conversation. So welcome, Julie. I'll kick it off with you if you'd like to share an introduction first.
Hi, Hannah. Thank you so much. Hello to everyone from all over the world, I suppose. As Hannah said, my name is Dr. Julie Meyer. I teach educational technology at the undergraduate, graduate, and doctoral level, specializing in curriculum instruction and integration of ed tech products all across the spectrum here going on.
Thanks, Julie. Welcome. And then Ian, I'll pass it off to you. Anything you'd like to share, introduction, experience-wise, as we kickstart this panel?
Hello, my name is Ian Fairley, and I have been teaching for about 6 years now. I'm on my sixth year. So I really just kind of bring a fresh experience of, not only Kahoot from, my time in undergrad, but also using it in the classroom today.
Amazing. What a privilege it is to have both of you here. The Kahoot crew always talks about we can envision what Kahoot can look like in classroom application and higher ed courses, but it's one thing to guess and another to hear it firsthand. So thrilled to have both of your perspectives here and really encourage anyone joining in virtually. If you have more anecdotes, experiences, inspiration to share, the chat is a great place to add on, and we'll do our best to moderate in the chat as well. But to kick things off, really want to kind of set the scene for what the ed tech landscape looks like in that higher ed experience. I'm sure everyone joining in from that College of Education, teacher preparation course background can relate to this experience. But Julie, maybe you set the groundwork for us when student teachers and teacher prep candidates and pre-service teachers come to your classes, your courses. What are you seeing as like the initial perception or how they think they'll use ed tech in the classroom? And what does that conversation sort of look like in actuality or even intention?
Thank you. So when I have my students come in the very first day, we talk about how ed tech needs to be a seamless integration in the curriculum, not the standalone, when you finish all the other things, now's your computer time. That we really want to be able to look at what they're doing in the classroom through that technological lens. So I challenge my students from day one to put their teacher hat on. How are you going to be able to look at any given app and use that in your classroom? And you need to keep in mind, my students come in wanting to be anywhere from kindergarten teachers to high school physics teachers. So I have to make sure that the apps that I choose to spotlight in my class are ambiguous enough to meet everyone's needs, that we're not looking at something that's specific to the sounds that farm animals make, but we also are not looking at some high level thinking calculator app to do extreme formulas going on here. So the apps that I choose to spotlight need to be agnostic for the use in the classroom. So I'm telling my students every single time we meet that we're building this tech toolbox. And literally, I will bring in a toolbox and tell my students, here's the visual for you, that when you leave our class 16 or 18 weeks later, that you have developed this toolbox or box of tricks for you to take with you into your future classrooms so that you hit the ground running. That's for my undergrads. For my graduate students, my doctorate students, same principles, but they have that classroom experience. So I want them to look at the apps that they're currently using in their classroom and then do some analysis of that. In fact, it's kind of ironic for me right now. That's the assignment that my graduate students have this week, is to find their favorite tech tool and then do a commercial of it. And I am always not amazed, because I shouldn't be amazed, because Kahoot is not an outlier when it comes to being a good tech tool. But routinely, I'd say if I have 25 students, at least 15 of those students will choose Kahoot as their go-to app that they choose to use for their commercial. And in that commercial, I ask them to give a quick demo, tell me how they're going to use it in the classroom, and then the benefits of using it and how they can easily integrate it within their curriculum. And I started thinking about that, coming up with the 13th year of Kahoot. Kahoot is an app that's not only been around for a long time, but it's an app that these students have grown up with. So if I'm talking to my undergrads, if it's been around for 13 years, they may have used Kahoot as kindergartners, even if they're my freshmen or my sophomores. If they're in the classroom already, they probably have had that experience at some point in time in their K-12 experience. So it just kind of makes sense that it is a predictive analytics for me to go with the assumption that Kahoot's going to be the chosen app.
Amazing. Julie, I love those anecdotes. It's hard for me to pick and attach to one as a superstar story, but I was definitely remembering that assignment of choosing an ed tech tool or an app or any sort of platform and sharing kind of why and how and what impact is made, and knowing that Kahoot is reviewed again and again, regardless that agnostic experience of the primary classroom teacher. Me as a former first grade teacher had a very different use case of Kahoot than I'm sure the high school PE teacher or the AP bio teacher was using Kahoot, or even how they were sharing with Kahoot in the classroom. So
Definitely.
really awesome to know that it's transgressed across really every
Every
site and
discipline.
every experience. Love to know that. And Ian, I imagine, or I hope that that experience kind of resonates with you, those goals of finding tools that work across the board in instruction and curriculum, really no matter the content area, no matter the classroom focus, and wondering if you could talk a little bit about what goals have been obvious from the student lens too. What are you seeing as being most interesting for students in gearing up for ed tech tools? And then as a coordinator yourself, what tools and what incentives are you leveraging for ed tech being accessible in student learning?
I would say that just one of the huge things that I've been using Kahoot for in my own classroom is for vocabulary check-ins. So one of the things that I love the most about it is that I can give a lesson and just in the middle of it, I can do a quick check on vocabulary, and the kids are all excited to do it. So it's not really like I have to worry about engagement too much. They're all excited to work on stuff like that, and then I can go in and say, okay, this handful of kids, they did not understand these coding terms at all. Let me go in and go back and check it or reteach. So it's great for little formative assessments, quick checks, things like that. I would say that that would be the biggest thing that I've used it for personally. And then also on the ed tech side of things, I get a lot of teachers asking me for different tools, stuff like that that I use. So I would say that Kahoot is one that we're coming around to quite a bit and using quite often.
Awesome. And I heard you say things like differentiated instruction, individualized learning, being able to find those gaps in teaching to know what students do need that remedial practice for coding terms. That would be me. What students need to review character studies in a novel unit, anything that has that refresher or review. Kahoot produces that formative assessment and that those data pieces immediately. So that again, like your teaching becomes more impactful in that. And I imagine that reliability of data and the validity of seeing student performance is why teachers are coming back to it again and again. And we know that there are lots of stressors and lots of busy points of teaching. So having one tool that you can keep coming back to and trust in again and again, I imagine helps to simplify that. And it's good to hear the teachers are coming back and asking for it year after year. That means it's working. Glad to know it. From the teacher perspective, Ian, we know, well, we hear a lot. A big pain point for teacher experiences is how they're staying flexible while maintaining some structure, while they're meeting goals, like the really difficult balance, treading the fine line of the flexibility meets the structure, meets the goals and all. And I think one transition kind of difficulty we're hearing, a pain point again and again, is that as more instructional technologies, more ed tech and tools are introduced in the classroom, teachers are feeling, especially new teachers, are feeling a lessened sense of control. The more technology they introduce, the more autonomy students have, which is a wonderful thing and can be a scary thing when you're managing digital literacy and interaction and cyber safety and all of those things. So, as a new teacher, kind of thinking about how you changed in the masters of ed tech versus your early years in teaching, how does this gamified environment with teachers where Kahoot might sound really exciting and vibrant and novel and yeah, enthusiastic to say the least. How does that gamified environment actually help to manage classroom behavior rather than feed into that lost control, that chaotic setting that teachers tend to be a little bit weary or frankly intimidated by, understandably so?
Absolutely. I think any teacher who's just started on, I think losing control of your classroom is one of the biggest fears that we have. And, a gamified classroom can get a little out of control. Voice levels start going up. Kids are screaming, they're excited, they're being competitive. And I think we just have to kind of drop this idea of a completely silent classroom being an engaged classroom. In my experience, especially at the K through 5 level, if kids are acting crazy and they're excited, they're screaming, they're yelling, this is what engagement looks like. These kids are all excited to be there. They are all excited to play. I don't have to walk around the room and wonder, okay, is so and so participating? I know that each one of these kids is, in fact, completely engage with what's going on. And although, yes, it does get a little wild, I think we have to just understand that this is the fun side of school. This is what's going to make them want to push forward with technology later on in life. This is what's going to push them to want to try new things and explore and fail and keep trying. So I think to answer your question overall, I think we need to just kind of drop this idea of a completely silent classroom and just realize that engagement comes in all sound levels, I guess we should say.
I love that. If I could put it on a billboard, that would be a perfect slogan for Kahoot. This is what engagement looks like. It's the conversations, it's the back and forth discussion, it's the enthusiastic jumping off your seats or raising your hands or even arguing with the teacher. That discourse is where learning happens. And sometimes, like letting go of that control, I'm sure like myself, we have many type A, very organized and structured educators that are here joining us. And we have to step back and really let people, I'm seeing Shayna in the chat says, let people be excited about the material, the content. And we're seeing that Kahoot does exactly that. So it's one
Oh,
thing.
Hannah, can I jump in, please?
Oh, please, please. Sorry, Julie. Love to hear
So,
added ideas.
no, I'm listening to Ian's stories and I'm thinking to myself, having taught kindergarten, first grade, fifth grade, or fourth grade, and then Ian's role of K-5, my college students, undergrad, and even my doctorate students are not so different from first graders. And I often remind them, you are just like first graders. And I mean that in the most sincere, appreciative way that when I hear that engaged learning and I see that happening with an app such as Kahoot, it probably sounds no different other than what Ian's seeing in his classroom. Although my bigger bodies probably make more noise and they are not afraid to jump off of things and go loud and bold. And many of my students are athletes, so they have that competitive edge.
And why not channel it into curriculum, instruction,
Exactly.
course materials, what have you? Awesome. Julie, I think this is like a perfect segue to my next curiosity of it's one thing to teach with the tool and it's another to teach how to use the tool, like that age old mantra perspective, give a man a fish versus teaching a man how to fish. We want to really teach these teachers how to use effective instructional tools, effective approaches to teaching. And so when you're preparing and working with these future educators, these pre-service teachers, what feels top of mind to you and how to teach with Kahoot, what to keep in mind as a pillar in ed tech, and ultimately working to incorporate that technology toolkit and toolbox, regardless of instruction and content area.
So I always like to model how the app is going to be used in my teaching itself. So we know that you can't just jump in there with this great tech tool. You have to build that background knowledge and talk about the why. Why would I use this? How does it fit into what we're doing? So I often, no matter what particular area I'm teaching, I start with a KWL that I can put into Kahoot. Mira mentioned the lecture mode. So I can go into lecture mode. So I don't have that competition going on because my students naturally want to fall into that competition mode. I can take that leaderboard off. I can ask open-ended questions with a different question format than we may or may not be used to in the audience here of the free version that we have available in Kahoot. There are so many different question options in the paid versions that allow you to really gather good, rich data points for your students to diagnose, for lack of a better way to put it, on where your students are so that you can continue to build off of that knowledge. And in doing so, I'm modeling that good pedagogical approach of building that background, whatever subject it is I'm teaching with my students. If I'm doing something with the International Society for Tech Ed, ISTE standards, my students don't come in knowing that, but it's since I teach standards based, I need to make sure that they understand that content so they know the metric in which they're going to be assessed. So I can start with KWL charts, open-ended questions, or word cloud feature in Kahoot and get knowledge from my students. Once I've built that background and I've modeled the use of the tool, specifically Kahoot, I can then turn it around on my students and ask them to create their own Kahoots with the subject that they're wanting to teach, put their teacher hat on and teach it to the class. The other neat feature that Kahoot has just recently offered is the slides link model. So I can take a presentation that I have in either PowerPoint or Google Slides and import all of that information that I've already built or the textbook that I'm using that already has the pre-made slides. And I can amplify that by adding questions through Kahoot, through that slide sync model. So now I've taken what would have been a very dry stand-up lecture mode, not modeling the pedagogy that I really want my students to take with them into their classrooms. But when I embed those interactive questions and turn it into not even so much gamification, but interactive, because the leaderboard is turned off at this point in lecture mode. But I have my students engaged and offering me their opinions, offering word cloud information, offering the pin questions where they're dropping pins, offering the puzzle questions where they're having to use the sliding. I need to stop talking with my hands. Sliding back and forth. It could be something along the slider where they're having to choose in between and the slider's going back and forth. There are so many wonderful question models that Kahoot now offers that if you're just on the free version, you're really missing out.
Yeah, and I think having that variety of question types and question formats not only adds to that more novel and interactive effect, keeps students engaged. It's less stale than doing one question after the other again and again. And it also teaches and calls upon those multiple intelligences. We know that some students really work what best with visual supports, whereas others really depend on language and text and that linear learning, and whether they're sorting in chronology, like in a puzzle question, or finding points of interest on a map. However, you're kind of appealing to those learning styles, those question types, it really help to add variety and diversify the learning experience. And we know that when you're an expert in a field, a researcher in a field, usually the case for professors in education, professors in sociology, psychology, all of those fields that are connected to education, there is hard and fast, true course material, lecture notes, presentations, research studies, experiments that you want to refer back to. And by no means are we asking teachers to ditch all of that content in that research. Instead, let's just offer a way to level up, make that learning even more incentivizing for students, interactive for students, and love the mention of slide sync, making that available.
Hannah, there was one thing that you mentioned when you're talking about differentiation of learning. The ADA compliant features that Kahoot has added really help with our neurodivergent learners, being able to help them out and being able to toggle those features on and off. For instance, maybe we're turning down the sound, maybe we have the voiceover to the questions. We all know in higher ed, if your campus is like mine, that ADA reauthorization that's coming very quickly in April is a huge thing. And it's nice to hear kudos to Mira and whoever else helped with all of the ADA adaptations that needed to take place. It's been very well received. So thank you.
Yeah, awesome. And I know that that's kind of one of those lesser known customizations and personalization tools that are available in Kahoot. And I believe a crew member is dropping a link in the chat in just a moment to reference those. Definitely worth the high contrast setting tools, the different imagery, the removal of sounds, and any distracting animations. Definitely helps to make a more accessible and inclusive learning experience. So appreciate that mention. Thank you
For sure.
for including it. I'm thinking about this in kind of a chronological experience. Pre-service teachers are with Julie, they're in the practicum, they're in their hours in the classroom, they're having all of that experience, they're picking and choosing the approaches and the pedagogy and the practices that work for them. We know every teacher is different in how they put together their language, their tools, their references, so on and so forth. So then in that timeline of experience, Ian, when these pre-service teachers come to you, let's say they're newly graduated, maybe you're calling upon your own experience as a new graduate, or even talking to new teachers in your building or across the district, and they're really eager to apply these new tools, whether it's Kahoot, whether it's technology at large, whether it's a one-to-one digital classroom. However, how are you helping teachers leverage this ed tech? Do you see the same themes of technology being like requested and asked about, or even become a non-negotiable in the classroom? I know you touched upon this a little bit earlier, that you're hearing teachers come back to that differentiation that's available in Kahoot. I'd love for you to share more on kind of what those conversations have looked like and what teachers come back to again and again.
Yeah, I would say that one of the newer trends that I have heard from teachers in my building, at least, is that we're trying to step away from as quite as much technology. I think we went a little overboard with it post-COVID in the post-COVID world, and I think we're kind of reeling that back a little bit, trying to strike a nice balance. So I would say that one of the biggest things that teachers come to me with is trying to find a balance between technology and physical pen and paper. Um, and so I want to kind of circle back a little bit to what I was talking about earlier with how I use Kahoot with the vocabulary. I think it's a great tool for teachers like that who want to, have part of their physical paper and pencil activity, and then also incorporate some kind of technology with it. So in the case of what I said, I will do, in my case, I'm a STEM teacher, so we use a lot of technology. But say you're doing a writing assignment with your students or something, and you want them to physically use paper and pencil. Well, we can leverage technology in a way so that, let's say they go and use a voice memo or something to record their ideas. So to answer your question, to sum it up, I would say that one of the biggest things that I'm seeing are ways that we can kind of step back our technology use a little bit while also maintaining a bit of technology in there as well.
Yeah, rely on like the tried and true rather than introducing every tool under the sun, expecting students to pick up on those routines and processes, and then also giving space for teachers to learn those again and again isn't
Hmm.
impactful use of time. So instead, relying on those tools, whether you're using specific question types or different sequences of learning. Julie, I know we talked about offline some ways that you're seeing your teachers prepare with novel studies, that balance of offline and online learning, incorporating tech, but in a
Hmm.
meaningful way is really the secret sauce of it all.
Definitely. One of the things, as Ian was talking earlier about the flashcards, I see, and I hear from my graduate students specifically because they're the ones that are in the field, that they are the pain point, like Ian said, of wanting to do a little bit more paper pencil rather than everything in ed tech. That makes my little ed tech sad heart sad, but we're not going to get into that. But instead, I can see the students taking their paper pencil notes or using the group notes and using the AI feature that Kahoot offers, being able to scan through AI their notes that they've taken and then using that for study tools. So even if the teacher isn't embracing the use of ed tech tools, the students can do that on their own. So building off of Ian's flashcard dilemma going on, that the students may be struggling with some of the vocabulary, and I see it with my students, not so much in my classroom, but because they're in a whole breadth of classes that they have to be. My PE teachers really have a pain point of anatomy, that it is just a class that they struggle with. Lots of vocabulary words, lots of bones and muscles and everything. They can take those vocabulary words, take those notes that they've written themselves, or even the teacher, the professor, if they've shared their notes, create it through AI and come up with flashcards so the students can study on their own in independent study mode or in small groups.
Yeah, and all of a sudden, what was once really passive learning, where they're reading through textbook notes or trying to make sense of a very linear, very static study guide, is now a very active, enriching, and ultimately reinforcing learning experience. I think we can all relate to that great gold star feeling of superpower learning when you're reading a flashcard and all of a sudden you do remember the exact verbatim of vocabulary or parts where a bone is, or even how to pronounce the bone itself,
Exactly.
whatever whatever it can be. That holistic full brain learning is how we make that long-term learning or convert it from just quick rote memorization to truly deeper level thinking. And in all of these, Julie, I would love to focus, kind of go deep on that experience of what that transition or even the segue from where we used to teach and lectures very passive style, from anything from like students learning basal readers in kindergarten and first grade to being in a lecture hall at a university and a teacher is just clicking through an overhead projector slides. Hopefully across all universities, we've really transformed from passive to active. How are you having that conversation with your pre-service teachers? What are some pillars or reminders or even non-negotiables that you're having these students keep in mind as they build out their own curriculum and lesson plans?
So one thing that I require is for them to actually use a gaming app. I want them to take their content that they would normally teach either during their observations or their student teaching and gamify a lesson. And again, 9 times out of 10, they choose Kahoot because of the familiarity with it. So I can see them modeling that best practice of active engagement going on in the classroom. Oftentimes, as professors, we tend to teach to the masses and we forget that each student may learn differently than the way in which we choose to teach. So I would always challenge my colleagues who are on this call and anyone who comes in to talk with me about ed tech apps, kind of like Ian. I get many questions from my colleagues outside of the School of Ed as well as within the School of Ed. How can I make my lectures or my classroom experience more enjoyable for my students and also see that assessment piece coming up? My students might be really struggling with this content area. What can I do differently? So between the lecture mode of Kahoot, the slide sync that's already available for your old trick that you've always had and being able to gamify it or at least cause the students to be actively engaged with the content definitely helps level up that engagement of your students. Turning it on my students to ask them to create their own games is huge. I laugh as you were talking about students. I can't tell you how many times I walked into the classroom that I teach in and seen small groups that aren't my students playing Kahoot on the big board because that was how they learned best. And they've created it on their own. It wasn't anything that their professor created for them. I think with AI, we are all maybe a little bit of afraid of it in higher ed. We need to embrace it. Kahoot has done a fabulous job of using the AI features of taking our lectures and coming up with quiz questions that would go along with what we would normally be lecturing on, so that expenditure of energy to create that extra level can easily be done and inserted with the AI features that Kahoot offers.
Absolutely. And I see Amy in the chat. She's talking about this very same experience now, the customization and personalization that you can kind of push on AI as being the brunt power so that your brain space, your brain power is focused on the meaningful conversations, the one-on-one troubleshooting and student support and individualized instruction rather than just in the busy work of assessment or study materials and so on. So and we're really short on time, only 4 minutes left, but I do want to pass the mic back to both of you, just thinking about any last words of wisdom or wrap up everything that you've shared so far. Huge impact. We're seeing it. I mean, personally, I'm loving having this conversation, but also in the chat, there's a lot of connection and tons of agreement on how we're using interactive tools to cement that long-term learning and how technology safely can be included to really make some big impact. So in that last student lens, and as you're seeing it, Ian, from the K-12 and the K-5, specifically experiences, what would you say as parting words, if you will? What would you say best practices you might share or connect with, or even teach and inspire with, so that your students, whether in the littlest years or even students that are on your roster coming back again and again, can take away from class? Like what do they need to know, or what best practices can you include so that they are left feeling like they're ready to teach themselves?
I would just say that my big key takeaway would be just to never feel like you are done adapting, I guess you could say. The world is ever changing. I mean, the jobs that were available when I graduated are going to be completely different to when the students I'm currently teaching are graduating. And so I think just staying on top of ed tech, what's current, what's going, or what's the latest and greatest trends? What are we chasing here? So just keep thinking about the future. We have to continuously adapt so that we can keep on pace with what the world will be like for them.
I know in our earlier conversations, you were saying like technology is here to stay. It's no longer
Yes.
resist. It's how can we incorporate, how can we adapt, and what a valuable learning experience and way of thought that it's no longer teaching students material or content, because I mean, I'm not an expert on STEM teaching or coding or software engineering, all of those like very technical skills, but I am an expert on teaching students how to learn and how to be excited about their learning, and taking that perspective, that mindset, that I'm no longer instructing as a subject matter expert or a content expert, but on a teaching and learning expert, will transgress all stages and phases of technology. So thank you for that. And Julie, I'll give you the last same opportunity. What advice do you have, speaking to the professor of education, the college of education, the pre-service teacher, that lens on how they can really curate design curriculum from one semester to the next?
I'm going to challenge my fellow professors who are on this call with us to step outside the box. Teach outside of the norm. Teach the way you would want to be taught if you were a student in that classroom. No longer do you need to be the sage on the stage, but rather the guide on the side, using an app like Kahoot to help your students learn best and actively engage them in the classroom.
I love that. I think when I was a pre-service teacher, my mentor teacher had that on some sort of bulletin board or a sticky note on her desk about the sage on the stage, guide on the side, being a part of the learning experience, really flipping that model so that you're with the students learning along the way and shoulder to shoulder in that learning experience. So thank you both so, so very much for such a compelling case on interactive and gamified learning and what that actually can look like. We heard from Mayra all about the how we're doing this with Kahoot. And then Ian and Julie, thank you so much for shedding light, adding color to the why, referencing the what we believe to be the awesome, the really research-backed initiative on how Kahoot is working in the classroom and what that Kahoot-based learning experience really looks like. As I mentioned earliest in our webinar, if you are still here and sticking around, we are so excited to offer you a very exclusive, a very fun, and very limited time offer for Kahoot to take advantage of some of these awesome features that Julie had mentioned, that Ian was referencing, that Mayra called upon in Slide Sync, advanced question types, different tools for data collection, sharing with you on the screen now. And I think a crew member is going to drop it in the chat. So definitely take advantage. You can click on that link. It gives you access to a free 30-day trial of Kahoot Plus Gold. All of our AI tools are part of that feature set. All of our slide sync tools, all of the advanced question types, the data and reporting tools embedded into that Kahoot Plus Gold feature. So would love for you to take advantage of that and really try it out for yourself. Make the most of these awesome features and really take advantage of the learning, the inspiration that we shared along today. All of the links and resources that we did share, both that Kahoot Plus Gold offer, as well as the research tools, the video tutorials, will be shared via email. So whatever email you use to register for this event, we'll get back in touch with you. We'll share a link to those resources as well as a link to this recording so that you can share it with colleagues, staff members, faculty on campus, whomever is interested, or maybe whoever you want to inspire on this. A big thank you to Julie and Ian for sharing your personal experiences, and for Mayra to guiding us through the research and the efficacy reports on how Kahoot is so impactful and is so awesome. We are so grateful to have learned alongside all of you today. Thank you for joining in. Thank you for sharing your time, your brain space, and your energy and attention with us. And we will see you on the podium. Happy Kahooting, everyone. Thanks so much.